Mega Man, 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 Mega Man! Those platforms fall!
Hey, no fucking shit! They're falling! They're fucking falling! I can see that!
So far, I've been enjoying the majority of the games in the X series. Unlike the games on the first X CTXN, where I played them at least once prior to this marathon, I'm heading to uncharted territory with X CTXN 2, and the first game in that TXN is Mega Man X5. The gap between X4 and X5 is the longest so far, as X5 was released in the year 2000 in Japan and 2001 in the West. However, there were plenty of other Mega Man titles between the two games, including the Mega Man Legends games, as well as Mega Man and Bass. From what I know, X5 seems to be the most diverse, as some people declare it as one of their favourites, and others see it as one of the weakest. But what do I think? Unlike the previous three games, the story already announces Sigma from the get-go in the intro stage, luring X and Zero into a trap to spread the Sigma virus that causes a majority of Reploids to go maverick, with newcomer Dynamo activating the Eraser space colony to crash into Earth. While I'm tired of seeing Sigma, I'm at least glad he doesn't steal the spotlight from anyone else. X and Zero go back to Maverick Hunter HQ to see the damage from the virus outbreak and find a way to prevent the space colony from crashing to Earth within 16 hours. We are introduced to 4 new characters: Aya the Guide, Sidness the new leader of the Hunters, Douglas the Mechanic, and Lifesaver the Medic. To prevent the colony crashing onto the planet, they must activate the Enigma cannon to destroy it. However, in order to increase the odds of destroying it, the cannon needs 4 pieces of equipment, which are gathered by 4 bosses: Tidal Whale, Crescent Grizzly, Silent Firefly, and Volt Kraken. I enjoyed how the bosses in X5 have dialogue with the hunters, giving them backstories. Unlike the previous titles too, these Mavericks aren't really part of a team, with the majority of them not being strictly evil. Instead, each fight is traded for different reasons, though we find out that X and Zero have poor diplomacy stats, or frequently get nat once on their dice rolls. Tidal Whale believes that the hunters will harm the ocean if he hands them the hydrogen, and Volt Kraken gets corrupted by the virus while interacting with the hunters. Dynamo is a new villain, but besides activating the space colony and distracting the hunters just so the timer can go down, he can be easily written out of the story, since we have no idea what his true motives are. The player has 16 in-game hours to defeat the Mavericks before the colony crashes. Each time you enter a stage, an hour drops, and if the timer runs out, the team fires the cannon anyway. This isn't something to be stressed over, as the timer will only go down once if you clear or leave a stage. It doesn't go down if you immediately restart the stage you died on. The timer itself isn't much of an issue in this game, since you would have plenty of time to wipe out all the Mavericks and find the MacGuffins you need. Like X4, lives are meaningless here, as you always start at the last checkpoint, even if you get a game over, which makes this particular collectible meaningless. There is a chance that the cannon can fail to destroy the colony, and if it does, the team must get 4 parts for the spaceship, which are gathered by the 4 remaining Mavericks: Spiral Pegasus, Dark Necrobat, Spiked Rose Red, and Berlin Dynarex. The spaceship also has a chance to fail, leaning into the bad ending of the game. X5 has 3 different endings, and they all depend on the outcomes of the cannon and spaceship cutscenes. If the cannon or spaceship succeeds, then you get the dead ending. If the cannon fails, then Zero will volunteer to be the pilot, since the autopilot function is damaged, and will attempt to crash into the colony. If the spaceship manages to completely crash into the colony, then Zero contacts HQ to tell them he's still breathing, X and Zero fight, as both X and Lifesaver believe he has gone Maverick, which isn't the case of the Din ending. After the fight, X falls unconscious and Sigma attempts to finish them off. Unfortunately for him, Zero still stands, making him retreat to the final area. During the final fight, Sigma reveals that Zero was created by Dr. Wily and that his plan of spreading the virus and crashing the Eraser economy that also had a large amount of the virus was so Zero can awaken to his true self as Wily's ultimate killing machine. Sigma goes down, but not before trying to take them both down with him. Both the hunters gain critical damages from the attack. However, Zero gives Sigma the final blow before he perishes. X sees his best friend die and is almost on the brink of death, not before Dr. Light heals him up. The ending cuts 3 years after Sigma's defeat, with X holding his best friend Z-Saber and continues the good fight. If you played as Zero in the last battle, he sees his past memories of his creation, as well as seeing Iris before dying. If the spaceship fails to completely destroy the colony, then a good chunk of the colony crashes down, leading to many casualties, and Zero will awaken to his ultimate self, forcing X to fight his best friend. Sigma kills Zero after the fight, but leaves X to live until he remains conscious. This would have been a perfect opportunity to destroy your arch nemesis, where he's totally defenseless, but Sigma has probably lost a few brain cells after being destroyed so many times. Like the Din ending, X defeats Sigma and is near on death's door until Light saves him. However, Light erases X's memories of his best pal. The story is a step up from X3 and X4, especially since this was originally meant to be the swan song of the X and Zero story, before leading to the Mega Man Zero series. However, with 3 games afterwards, this was changed. I like the direction of the story, though there are some issues. It feels weird to add new supporting casts at what is meant to be the finale, but the major issue is how you get the endings. Like I said earlier, the 3 different endings all depend on the outcome of the canon and spaceship scenes, but the way to get them isn't dependent on the player's skill, but on random luck. You can increase the stats if you defeat the Mavericks, but the chances don't increase much. During my multiple playthroughs, I never got the canon to actually work, despite beating the 4 Mavericks. And I know you can get it to work because I've seen playthroughs of the game years ago. The canon has a very low chance of succeeding. If you fail the spaceship scene, then you automatically get the bad ending. The chances of failing a spaceship isn't as high as the canon scene, especially when defeating the rest of the Mavericks, but still deciding how the events go on RNG is BS. It's stupid, as even though X2 and X3 did the multiple scenarios too and weren't executed too well, at least it was determined on the player's skill. You also use Zero if you failed the spaceship sequence, so if you were using him throughout the game, then you would have to play as X. Heart tanks don't also stack between characters, meaning if you detected them as Zero and lost them, X would only have a small amount of health that he had at the beginning. There are a couple of heart tanks exclusive to X, since there are areas where Zero cannot reach to try to counter this issue. But this is still an issue, since you would have to go back to the previous stages, at least the energy tank stacked. Just to clarify, unlike X4 where both characters have separate campaigns, X5 allows you to swap between the two during the playthrough, so you can mix and experiment with them to your heart's content. If you're studying on a stage as X, you can swap to Zero for an easier time, or vice versa. Just a warning though, at the beginning of the game, pick X, since if you put him in the intro stage, he gains the 4th armor from X4 immediately, and while you don't have infinite ammo and the Nova Strike ability, the other perks are still intact. it outclasses the default armor. If you put 0 at the beginning, he gets a measly pea-shooter, which is weak and he cannot move while shooting. It's like if you were offered an ultimatum to choose either watching Into the Spider-Verse or Boss Baby. There are 2 additional armors, the Falcon armor and the Gaia armor. The Falcon armor allows X to soar into the skies for a few seconds, and once you get it, you can skip a lot of the challenge from the rest of the levels. The Gaia armor makes X immune to spikes, can keen onto walls, and he has a powerful charge shot. However, his movement, dash speed, and fire range is greatly reduced, and he cannot use special weapons. I only used it to get 1 or 2 heart tanks. You won't be able to use either the Falcon or Gaia armor until you have collected all the parts for that particular set. You also won't be able to use the armor straight away once you got all 4 parts, as the Ike worries for security reasons due to the virus outbreak, which from a story perspective, it probably makes sense, but I found it stupid since you can immediately use the new armors in previous games. I would have preferred if you just got each armor once in 2 stages, instead of going on a scavenger hunt to find both sets, since the individual parts are useless. It would certainly make the backtracking less tedious. You need the Falcon armor anyway, in order to get the majority of the parts, since the capsules can only be found with the Falcon suit. At least it has more use than the rideable mechs in X3. Speaking of X3, X5 has similar problems with backtracking, as in order to get everything, you need to repeat some of the stages. You need to get the Gaia suit in order to get the heart pieces in Sign of Fireflies and Vault Crashing stages, but you need to get the Falcon set first to get the Gaia armor, which the parts are found in those stages. The biggest offender is Tidal Whale stage, which you need to revisit 3 bloody times to get everything. You have to beat the stage to gain Tidal Whale's weapon in order to open the capsule, and then come back with the Falcon or Gaia suit to get the heart tank. You can use 0 to get the heart tank too, but the number of times still remains the same. Tidal Whale stage is also a Yon Ultra Destroyer, and both collectibles are at the halfway point. Most of my playthroughs relatively stay the same in terms of boss order. While you can jazz it up a bit, the weakness route is the most optimal route, requiring the least amount of backtracking. If you want, however, you can immediately enter the final stages without entering the Maverick stages. You will be heavily nerfed, but it is possible. I had more fun not bothering getting everything, and just played casually with the powers you get from the Mavericks, which has a decent selection. The Tri-Thunder is a combination between the Yak Beam from the first Mega Man game and the Scrabble Thunder from 11, which means it's heralded. The charged version of the Crescent Shot creates a shield around X, causing harm to any foe. The Dark Hold is a throwback to Flashman's Time Stopper from Mega Man 2, and the charged version of the F-Laser fires a large beam that is active for a few seconds. Zero's abilities mostly stay the same, with some slight variations to his uppercut and downward stab, but he also gains some new tools. His air dash makes him invincible that can slightly change his trajectory while damaging foes in his range. The Twin Dream creates a clone of himself similar to Soul Body from X4, but the clone can perform the same moves as Zero, dealing twice the damage. My favourite technique of his is the Crescent Sword, where he also gains access to a double jump and a spin attack, which has a large hitbox that deals a lot of damage, especially towards bosses. You really don't need to use the boss weakness with Zero, since the Crescent Sword is just faster. If you enjoyed playing as them in the previous game, you probably enjoyed them here. The bosses do have Spark Mandrill syndrome, and it's worse with the boss rush portion of the game, since in the boss rush, their health increases to the top of the screen. Their moves don't change, so it just makes fights last longer, especially when going up against Burning Dynamax and Crescent Grizzly, when their invincibility frame lasts for ages when they are hit with their weakness. thankfully you can just get the ultimate armor with X with either the cheat code or the third portion of the final stage to cut down the fat. Without their weakness, I found the majority of the fights to be pretty good, especially against Spike Rosered, Tidal Whale and Volkraten, offering a variety of moves. 6 out of the 8 stages are also fun to play through with their own unique settings and obstacles. Spike Rosered has these fine sections showing off the rope grind feature, and Sign of Firefly has plenty of horizontal and vertical platforming. X5 does feature some BS stages, being Volkraten's and Tidal Whale stages. I've already explained why I don't like Tidal Whale stage, but Volkraten starts off with a bite section that has a bottom pit before the ready sign disappears. The first part uses practically no room for error, as one mistake can lead you to your death. If you want to get the capsule in this stage, you have to get all of these orbs floating around in one go, otherwise you have to restart till you do. In this part, I turned on the rapid fire feature that makes this part of the level a bit easier. The second part isn't any better since you have to do various push puzzles to activate these doors. After the first time, it gets dull. One of the things I don't particularly like about this game is Aya, forcing you to pause and make you listen to the basic fundamentals, which aren't all that useful most of the time. What was supposed to be the final chapter, it was an odd choice to add unskippable tutorials. Like the first time I played X5, it's like whatever, but for every time you want to play, it just becomes redundant, forcing me to math my way through the dialogue. There is even an optional tutorial mode in the menu for players who want to learn the ropes, so I don't know why they added her into the main campaign. Speaking of unskippable dialogue, this game doesn't have any skippable cutscenes, and the only way to end them is to mash on the button. While X4 story is bad, at least you can skip them on repeated playthroughs. I liked X5 story, but if I want a casual session, I'd have to mash my way through the cutscenes, and under X4 with the fully voiced animated cutscenes, X5 just has still images and the beeping noises, and those beeping noises can be a bit irritating after the first time. The music though is fantastic. There are so many greats like Spike Rosereds, Volkratens, and Dark Necrobat stage. I really get Sonic CD vibes from Dark Necrobat stage. One of my favourite tracks is the opening track when you boot up the game, which starts off so calm and melancholy, but then gets amped up halfway through, making it feel like the finale. There are even some remixes in this game too, like Tidal Whale stage is a remix of Bubble Crab stage from X2. Out of all the X games I've played so far, this is probably the one I have the most inflated thoughts on. It does a lot of things right with the story, the weapons you get from the Mavericks, level design, and this is the first time the characters can crouch. But there is a lot of questionable design choices too, like Aya, the constant backtracking, the RNG scenarios, and the way the capsules were handled. This game is certainly better than X3, but if I want to play a Mega Man X game, I would rather jump back to the older titles. If I ever go back to this one, it would only be for a casual run and not a 100% run. If the other games on the session yet the CTXN are any fun, then maybe give this one a try. The next game in the franchise I'm going to tackle is X6, which is going to be interesting. If you enjoyed this video, then I hope you stick around. Until then, I hope you have a wonderful day.